Hi, my name is Veronica Bruce, and I'm a SAG-AFTRA member, have been since 2015. I'm discussing today a couple of provisions that I have concerns around, and I'm talking about some of the AI provisions. The first provision I'm going to be talking about is under generative AI, and I'm just going to read from the summary. It's page 3, the very bottom, section C. It says, 1, establishes a broad protective definition of generative artificial intelligence. 2, establishes terms for use of synthetic performers created through generative artificial intelligence. A synthetic performer is a digitally created asset that 1, is intended to create and does create the clear impression that the asset is a natural performer who is not recognizable as any identifiable natural performer. 2, is not voiced by a natural person. 3, is not a digital replica. And 4, no employment arrangement for the motion picture exists with a natural performer in the role being portrayed by the asset. So just to clarify that means the synthetic performer was not created by a SAG-AFTRA member, nor is it representative as a SAG-AFTRA member. And then it goes on to say, 1, parties acknowledge the importance of human performance in motion pictures and the potential impact on employment. And number 2, this is actually where I'm really concerned. I want to know exactly what this means. Notice to union and an opportunity to bargain in good faith over appropriate consideration, if any, if a synthetic performer is used in place of a performer who would have been engaged under this agreement in a human role. And I was actually able to ask Duncan Crabtree questions about this provision in particular. So here we go. Oh, the full footage is available, of course, on SAG-AFTRA's YouTube channel. Go and watch a lot of interesting questions and a lot of interesting answers there. So let's go ahead and take a look. Bruce, I wanted to thank you so much for opening up this AI dialogue. And my question goes to actually what you keep on saying about synthetic performers in the Gen AI section, talking about being able to bargain for them to de-incentivize. Could you please go more specifically into what that means? Is that a penalty fee? What exactly are you okay to bargain?
Well, first of all, let me just say that determination will be made by the standing committee for this contract, which is the negotiating committee that you see up here.
I'm going to pause right there. So he just said that that's going to be determined by the negotiating committee, as if it's not already determined. My understanding is we completed this negotiation already. So that was kind of an interesting part of the response to me. Maybe I misunderstood, but I thought that was interesting.
Well, some of the members aren't here. So that's, how we would strategize the demand for that is something that would depend upon the circumstances. But in general terms, it would be to make sure that the cost of doing that, our estimate of what it would have cost for them to engage an actual performer to do that work is the floor for that bargaining. I wouldn't call it a penalty fee for various legal reasons, but what I would call it is us negotiating, which we have every right to do under the provisions of this contract, for an economic terms that we think are appropriate for the use of a synthetic performer.
So what I just heard him say is that, say it's a background scene, and say 10 background people should have been used in these roles, then he would say 10 times the rate of a background performer as the floor for what he would be bargaining, which makes me wonder, where would that money be going? Is there going to be a way to figure out which background performers should have been paid or would have been paid? How exactly is that money going to be distributed?
And from my point of view, the economic terms that would be appropriate for that use are terms that are at least equal to or preferably greater than what the cost of that would have been to use a human performer to do the same work.
My concern, again, that sounds really interesting, because it's like, wait a second, literally this is a synthetic performer. It is not a member of our union. And you figured out a way, which sounds like it could be pretty lucrative for the union, to get money when performers actually aren't working, right? And then I go on to ask something else. And I feel like it's so obscure. It's like, how are you going to, if you're going to take that money, if you're going to bargain some level, how then are you going to distribute that? Who's going to decide? How much of a side letter is this? And that's where I'm getting kind of frustrated, because I'm like, I'm concerned that this language is so ambiguous, right? And of course, we haven't seen the contract language yet, so perhaps there's more specificity there. But we know that when there is not specificity in a contract, that really opens up for a side letter. Side letters are additional things that go in to define some of these ambiguous statements. This isn't the perfect definition. I'm not, a law professional either. But essentially, this is written, it's created, and it does not have to go through ratification to membership. So it doesn't have to be ratified. It doesn't have to be voted on. Like right now, we're actually voting on ratification for our codified basic agreement. They could write some side letters saying who knows what. The members don't even get to decide if that sounds like a good deal or not, which is part of my frustration that I was expressing there.
So as far as crowd scenes goes, I'm glad you brought that up because, when we talk about crowd scenes, I want to just remind everybody that the proposed contract includes a guarantee of employment of actual human background actors up to the coverage maximums in our...
So no, right now he's actually not, he's answering a question I did not ask. He's actually going to speaking about digital doubles and digital replicas, which is not what my question is about at all. It is about the synthetic performers.
Contract. So if there are crowd scenes where they're going to use any kind of AI replication for numbers above that, that's outside the jurisdiction of our contract, number one.
Yeah, he just said that's outside the jurisdiction. And actually my concern is that this synthetic performer provision is actually outside the jurisdiction.
One. Number two, all of the SAG-AFTRA covered background will be engaged. And if they use digital replicas of those or other SAG-AFTRA background in order to fill out those crowd scenes, they will have to be paid. So, a very plausible possible way that could be done is by actually engaging more covered background actors. The covered background actors in person, plus covered digital replicas for whom they are getting paid and getting benefit plan contributions, even though they don't have to report to work physically that day. Having said that, it is a guarantee in the contract that up to those coverage numbers, background actors have to be engaged. So for purposes of crowd scenes, we're not going to see a diminution of the number of days of work for background actors. As a matter of fact, we're going to see a vast increase in that because, as I'm sure you know, the current number for theatrical motion pictures, for example, is 57 covered positions in the West Coast zone.
Which he's not answering my
question. And now that number is going to go up to, is it 80 or 85? I can't remember. 85. So
and now
that means
on
any
people behind
project where you're going to be hiring a large number of background actors, you now have a huge number of additional covered positions, and all of those have to be filled with humans, not with AI tools. So I just wanted to be clear for crowd scenes. I don't think that's an area. I mean, there are plenty of areas for concern in AI. I acknowledge that. I don't think crowd scenes is one of them for those reasons. And now that I went into that whole rant about crowd scenes, Veronica, I'm so sorry. I forgot the second half of what you said.
That is exactly... So he actually was trying to go on to my second question. So he was trying to divert, it seems, but I don't know. Those are synthetic performers, and you're talking about synthetic performers that you're going to bargain for. I'm not concerned with the 80 coverage. I'm still asking, what does that mean being bargained? Because it's like these synthetic performers do not reflect to be a member of the union. They were not created by the union. How are you bargaining for something that you don't represent as a bargaining representative?
Because we're not really bargaining. We're not bargaining to get the synthetic performer paid.
And so actually, this is actually where I'm getting frustrated, because I'm like, this provision actually sounds like it's outside of the scope of the bargaining representative. The union represents performers, human performers. And part of my concern with this provision is this opening up a place where the union is actually figuring out a way to bargain for not real performers? Does this create a conflict of interest in which they're not advocating fully and 100% strongly for the human performer? Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the other policy that I have a question of, which is consent. Consent for the performer when they're deceased. So it says, actually it's under number 2, use other than in the motion picture for which the performer was employed. Consent. Consent continues after death unless explicitly limited otherwise. If performer is deceased and consent is required, it may be granted by an authorized representative of the deceased performer, or if representative cannot be found by the union. Now, there's already, at least I know in California, and it's also, I'm sure, in many other states, it's already in law that this is left to the estate. Well, I'll just go ahead and go to the question because I go ahead and go into this. I don't know. But we'll have to wait and see. My next question is also about AI, and it's about the deceased performers. And I've heard you say two different, that right there was me being told that I had 57 seconds, which I could very clearly see, and I use my time very wisely. I've heard you say two different things. On Monday, it sounded like it was an opt-out situation, like, hey, if you don't want the union to be deciding for things for you when you're deceased, then you just let us know. And then I heard you on the Instagram Live saying that, well, of course, you know, the producer said they needed this because they didn't know where to go, as if they don't know to go to the estate. And then you said it was kind of an opt-in situation. So which one is it? And is it really necessary to keep that kind of union consent aspect on there because it's already kind of law? So I was just curious about how exactly that's going to work. Thank you.
Sure. So I don't think that I said two different things. If it came across that way, I apologize. But it's neither an opt-in nor an opt-out. It is built into the contract. The way you can opt
built into the contract. It's already law. Why does it need to be in there? What does built into the contract mean?
Is by having a will, having heirs, having beneficiaries, and making sure that they keep the union informed in the event of your untimely demise as to who they are and where they are, so that there will never be a need for union consent to be an issue.
So the reason why I'm actually bringing this up is because I have a real issue, again, like I've said, with, is this for SAG-AFTRA members or is this for SAG-AFTRA Corporation? And this is where we actually have to go back and look at history. So I think it was around 2002. This was actually after the merger. Foreign residuals and any unclaimed residuals, any unclaimed money goes to the state. If you ever want to go and check and see if you have unclaimed property, unclaimed money, that's a really simple task. Everybody knows where to go and find unclaimed monies. They made a change, and Duncan Crabtree Ireland was part of that. He worked, he was actually a huge part of creating the merger as well as creating this change in which it was no longer default that performers' money went straight to these uncollected monies with their state, but instead it was sent to the union. In 2022, I think it was said that the unclaimed residuals are up to like 76 million or something along those lines. And it's like, wow, that's a lot of millions of unclaimed residuals that the union said their administration would go and find these people and make sure they get their money. So if they're already having such an issue with unclaimed residuals, can we really trust them with a deceased performer's consent? Can we really trust them to deal with any administration around receiving our monies, finding us, and giving it to us? It's concerning to me. And I mean, just go take a look. It's creating a default situation that could be serving SAG-AFTRA Corporation, not SAG-AFTRA members. And again, that's my huge concern with these proposals. Know your history. Let's get the contract. Where's the contract? Let's read those provisions and, just be very vigilant, because at the end of the day, here's the deal. We all know, we are all taught, do not sign a contract you haven't read. And that's where we're at right now. I hope this was thought-provoking, and happy researching and happy voting.